Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about juggling meritocracy, sort of free market, small government policy, and mental health. So I think in psychology we get taught a lot of like, oh, what sort of, how do we fix this? And it's always like more funding, different laws, very unrealistic at times, especially for sort of companies, like revenue and profit, and these things sort of aren't really taken into account. But there has to be a best way, and there has to be a good way. And so I think a good way to sort of um, illustrate this idea is social media. So should social media companies be able to create platforms in which the desired outcome is poorer mental health? Yeah. So the desired outcome of social media platforms, Reels, TikToks, short form content, is to make you stay on your phone for as long as possible. And not only that, it's that your the primary output of these algorithms is outrage. So the algorithms are not designed to make you happy or show you funny videos. They're designed to create the most emotional impact, which you often see with big like political ideas on Instagram, us versus them, these guys versus these guys, good and bad. Those videos do really well in the algorithms. So, should a social media company be able to market that? Well, a free marketer, and going to sort of do this as a sort of Socratic debate where not necessarily my own ideas, but here we go, spider. But I'll argue sides that I don't necessarily believe. But a free marketer would say, well, the company should have the right to create whatever they want. So it's harmful to the populace, but it is a choice. Now, the thing that sort of instantly comes up for me then is well, drugs. Like, you can choose to take meth or cocaine or heroin, and it's like, why shouldn't that be legal then? And then the response to that is, well, if you're driving drunk, or you're on methamphetamines, or you're on cocaine or any of these sorts of drugs, you can pose harm to yourself and others. And that's quite an immediate harm. So, if you drunk drive, the risk of accident for not only yourself but other people is exponentially increased. Whereas by consuming short-term content or social media, say, for example, our average person, I don't know, we'll say it's someone who's not too addicted, but maybe 7 hours of screen time a day, which is quite popular among, the sort of the youth or the younger generation. So 7 hours of screen time, we'll call it 6 hours of short form content. It's a long time. Definitely there have been multiple studies that have shown the poorer impact. I think that the research is currently showing a few different things. Short form content and the impact on our neurotransmitter systems are terrible. So our reward system with our dopamine pathways gets screwed by short form content, and the algorithms are designed to manipulate this. So that's one. And then not only that, there's research coming out now, and look, I should find these references and put them in the links, but we'll wait for that for later. Let's just get some content out first. Is that it's a baseline, your emotional volatility jumps up. So I think I saw this on a Chris Williams podcast with a psychologist, and it's that your baseline emotional volatility while consuming short form content is boosted afterwards because you're heightened, you're in a state of arousal. So you say someone does something that annoys you, where normally you would just go, oh, that's annoying. Your reaction is more volatile, so you're more likely to snap, be angry, aggressive, any of these sorts of things. So then, those are two. We'll go another three just for, sort of well-rounded argument. You've got, poorer mental health outcomes, like poorer self-image, those kind of things, especially among younger kids, sort of primary school, high school, like body image, self-image, like confidence, like all of these things that decrease with social media. And I'm sure I can and will find many studies to back this. I think that it's quite a generally accepted theory. Oh, spider. Can you go away, mate? What do you want? Anyway, quite as generally accepted theory and such that I don't need to provide specific references. I think we can. The literature agrees that those three things do come from social media. Now, so free market social media, and you say, well, in a free market, if you want to, okay, I'm just going to go back to the sort of Socratic method because I think that's the easiest way of doing this. You say, well, I think that the government should implement restrictions on social media, and then we do the drug argument, and then you say, well, the outcomes are so poor from social media that the government needs to do something about it. But then again, like the outcomes from smoking tobacco, cigarettes, vaping, well, vaping's illegal, but smoking cigarettes and drinking are just as bad, if not worse. Sort of different evils, not really comparable. But you say, well, I think they should ban social media, and you say, well, then the response is that why should an adult that is allowed to day drink and smoke cigarettes from the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep not allowed to be on their phones? So, it's hard to put restrictions on that. So now I'm trying to sort of think about this, and then you say, well, the smoking, the drugs and the cigarettes, and you say, yeah, and so then that's why it should be legal. I think that's a sort of an outcome from that Socratic debate, is that you would sort of say, well, as a result, if someone can drink and smoke all day, every day, then they can watch reels or short content all day, every day. So I think that's, in my opinion, that is a reasonable counter-argument for making them illegal. So now what do you do? So I think there's like a couple of economic theories or sort of policy theories, but there definitely needs to be sort of something that's going on. These fucking spiders. He loves it over here near me, and I wish he would just... He's only tiny though, so that's all right. Anyway. You should... So, adults, you can't restrict the adult liberties. So, the Australian government, and I think more other governments as well, are restricting it for children. So now children under 16 in Australia can't access social media. Seems like a good solution. Seems pretty reasonable, in my opinion. Being able to develop without... he's going into my bag there. Being able to develop without social media, I think, is important. So, go away. So yeah, being able to develop without social media is important, and I think that's a good implementation. Now, so with adults, how do we get people off social media? So because the algorithms are made to be as outrageous as possible, so therefore we need to try and reduce this. For me, because it's hard, right? So obviously I'm trying to think as I go and sort of come up with arguments on either side, but realistically, there's not really much that I can think of. So I'm going to try and sort of go through education. The big thing that I've found is that by leaving my phone out of my room and stopping scrolling throughout the day, you can definitely see an increased productivity. So when I was studying for my exams, especially, I wouldn't go on my phone for like the whole day. I would make sure I stay out for hours. And then, in the sort of the first little bit of your day, you're like, oh, you kind of feel like you should go on your phone. What am I missing out on Instagram? And as the sort of hours progress, you definitely start to feel a noticeably less inclination towards having a scroll. So definitely a good one. Would recommend. So I think here we sort of drift away from what the government can do, because I think that I've sort of established through the Socratic idea that government can't really do much for an adult, because can't really limit these sort of technologies. So you need to incentivize other things. That's the economic way to do it. You would incentivize ways to do it out. So you've got education and incentives, I would say, are probably the two main ones. Can't really think of any more at the moment. So educate people. So in my opinion, if you start the day off without a scroll and you don't go through the whole day, your productivity is boosted. And as well, if you blast your neurotransmitter and your dopamine receptors first thing in the morning with Instagram Reels, algorithms designed to make you feel good and shit at the same time. There's so many spiders, man. Holy. You're not going to feel great. So I think that's a huge impact on the mental health crisis. Definitely the waking up first thing and the scrolling. So that's a good one. Number one for education. Don't wake up and scroll straight away. Number two, the other thing that I've realized is that if you have a break at work, don't jump on me. If you have a break at work and you spend it scrolling, you're on a half an hour break, your lunch break, whatever, and you spend it scrolling, it goes quite quickly. However, you don't really think the whole time, because, you kind of get tunnel vision. All you can see, once you start to notice, this really freaky. Once you start to scroll, if I was sitting here, and this is the sort of the view that I have, pretty bloody nice. This is pretty good. Can't ask for much better. And then if I was to be scrolling right now, you find that your surroundings sort of dissipate and you're very focused on the little screen that you have. And like this sort of part of the whole scene is bad. And like you may even be finding this watching this video that you're not really aware of your surroundings. But when you're scrolling, like you get out of it and you're like, holy shit, like all I've seen is that screen. So when you're on your breaks from work and when it feels like, if you're studying or you're at work and you have a scroll, you don't have to think. You're never thinking. You're kind of just feeling the whole time. And normally you're actually feeling quite aggravated when you think about it. But, you could have a good feed and you could be feeling happy, but you're not thinking, you're only feeling. So that feels like a break. It's, they've sort of found a way to stop the endless stream of consciousness. Because if we both sit here now for 10 seconds, let's say, think now. You will find that your conscious voice or your consciousness is continuing. Like there wasn't just silence there. You're never, when you're going to sleep, it's not just silent. I think the scientific theory is that consciousness is an unendless stream. So you can't just sit there and think nothing. But the phone, then you can sit there and think about nothing. So that's why it feels like such a break. So it feels like, you go on lunch and it's like, you find that your lunchtime goes really quickly when you're just having a scroll, but you didn't need to think about anything. So even though you are feeling a lot and it's really bad for your brain, you don't have to think, which is quite the respite for most of us, not having to think about anything. But then you sort of realize, well, that's actually not a great trade-off. I would rather have to think, no matter how depressing or aggravating the thoughts would be, but it's an escape. And now this is where sort of philosophy comes into it. But yeah, so you've got that education. So it's being aware that even though you think that you're having a break, you're really not. You're getting blasted, you're getting angry, you're getting upset. You'll find that when you go back and then you're kind of drawn, your phone's here and you kind of feel it like tugging at your brain, like, because you want the dopamine. And then you feel upset. So those are the main parts of education that I can think of now. And then incentives. So we had to do this in one of my microeconomics classes, actually, and it's hard because incentivizing people to get off their phone is very difficult, especially young kids. But you don't have time to we have a lot of time now. Time is a luxury that not really afforded to every single generation that have come since. We've had to farm, work the land, go to war. There's been constant conflict and violence, whereas now, for those of us who maybe live in Australia or the US, and if you're sort of above any, like, if I don't want to say that everyone doesn't have it, because a lot of people don't, but at a sort of middle class, like the sort of benchmark on the average person, they have a lot of time to go on their phones, which was not really afforded to many people previously. So, how do you incentivize people to get off their phones? Well, there's a lot of incentives, because you find, like, that's why, so a good example is festivals. So I think that the reason that, aside from, I don't know, I've never really been to a proper festival, but a lot of people go to festivals and they take a lot of drugs, and that's probably why they like it there as well. But at the same time, you realize that you're spending time with just your friends without your phone for 4 or 5 days straight. And I think that's got a massive part to do with it. Like, obviously, there's a lot of drinking and there's a lot of drugs, and people love that sort of stuff, especially younger generation. But the time without the phones, I think, is a big... Well, there's 2 now. Jesus Christ. Is a big thing that I think a lot of people don't think of and or realize, that the reason that they are very happy with their festivals and they crave them or they miss them or they feel like they need to. And then, sort of like, aside from festivals, camping and hiking and things like that, a lot of people, as they get older, they sort of start to enjoy these things because you're off your phone, you're away from the work and you're with your friends and you're hanging out. So it's really it's a big thing. So then, how do we get that into daily life? And I don't know the answer, to be honest. Try and work hard. I try and go out saying, so what I think here, the way that I try and counter it is by learning. So I've got quite a passion for knowledge and learning. So reading a lot of books, even engaging with fiction. I read a lot of fiction and non-fiction, but fantasy, sci-fi, watching TV, these sorts of, like, when you're engaging with stuff that's not for, sure, TV and gaming, they can be not so good, and a lot of people are very addicted to those, but in moderation, stories have a massive impact on, our sort of lives. We've always had stories, we've always had storytelling, and now we have books. So, I think engaging with learning, literature, TV, movies, and when I say TV, I don't really mean like Love Island, like, there's sort of a lot of good stuff, like a lot of people now, like a lot of gym bros and stuff, and myself included, like, drift towards anime because, like Naruto and even like Berserk is crazy popular because you're sort of struggling with these massive ideas, good, evil, morality, and Naruto, where you're getting through stuff, or did Griffith do anything wrong? And those big ideas are attracting a lot of people now, and those things are gaining a lot of traction because you're not getting anything from scrolling, but you're getting so much from engaging with these massive ideas that I think, aside from government, what we can do is learn, engage with fiction, engage with literature, and I think I'm going to touch on that more in the next video, engaging with literature and fiction.